Well, the FBI's narrative, something like this. There is a toxic hierarchy of careerists that run the FBI, but they don't represent the rank and file. I don't believe it's just the hierarchy. I believe the hierarchy has permeated its values all the way through the FBI. And there's wonderful people there, but they understand that they're not going to be promoted or recognized unless they toe a particular line. So yeah, I'm worried about it. Why not break it up? And just take the entire agency and disperse it throughout the federal government. This idea, a federal bureau of investigation, you have too much power and its record is too dangerous to democracy. Right now, at this moment, the FBI is one of the great threats to democracy. Do the directors lie? Yes, they lie under oath, ask for FBI phones, critical, they erase them. And they oversee a bureau that will wipe clean phone records that are under subpoena, or they will not prosecute one person, but they will another. Then it's institutionalized. And you've got to get rid of it. It's so ironic because we're all in this era of, we're not J. Edgar Hoover, but we think that J. Edgar Hoover polluted the wonderful idea of the FBI. It may have been all along that the FBI's pernicious idea polluted J. Edgar Hoover. That is, in a democracy, in a constitutional republic, do you really want a national federal police force, a Stasi-like a Gestapo? There's no need for it. They are completely out of control.
The FBI and Justice Department are warning of increased threats to law enforcement following the raid. Turchie is with us. He's a former Deputy Assistant Director at the FBI.
I just don't think anything has come to light that would have merited what happened last week in the way that search was conducted. And so they actually asked for this.
Do you think that the FBI actually politicized itself?
Well, yes, and I don't even think that's an arguable point anymore. Remember, they brag about the Robert Mueller transformation of the FBI. He transformed it to a national intelligence agency, and it automatically defaults to being at the beck and call of politicians. That's what that means. It used to be an investigative agency. So
you just heard from Victor Davis Hanson, historian, and in the words from the FBI prior to Robert Mueller, who, by the way, took over the FBI the week before the 9/11 attacks. Coincidence? Or planned? Is Victor Davis Hanson correct? Does the FBI need to be dismantled to have a free society? It's up to you to decide. Choose wisely and don't remain silent. The future of the country depends on it.
Enforcement wages war against their political enemies here at home. They've managed to let the real threat, China, creep into our most sacred institutions. And they opened the doors to the White House to the communist spies. And today, we're finding out Joe Biden may have compromised the CIA too. The Daily Caller reporting that the Biden CIA director, Bill Burns, employed at least 20 members of the Communist Party when he was in charge of an elite Washington think tank, most of which had ties directly to the Chinese government. And while they were on the payroll, they were flying from Washington to Beijing. Burns even employed communists to sit on his board. If he let the Communist Party infiltrate his think tank, how can we trust him to head and lead the CIA? How can we hold China accountable? Well, Buck Sexton is a former analyst at the CIA.
Elites in this country for decades have been fundamentally wrong about what would happen with China. And it was also wrong in a way that benefited them. They believe that if we made China wealthy, if we turned a blind eye to all the trade practices and cheating that they were engaged in until President Trump came along, that everything would get better, there'd be more liberalization and things would improve. What we've seen is they've actually burrowed further and deeper into our institutions than ever before. Look at massive corporations now.
Totally.
They bend the knee constantly to China, and the Democrat Party, I think, is unwilling to view China as the threat that it truly is, and is much more concerned about holding January 6 hearings and lecturing us about the threat to national security from Donald Trump, as we've seen. Yep. This is something that until we meet the challenge, there will be a continued effort by the Chinese, and a successful one, to steal our most sensitive information and technology, but also to push our policy in ways that benefit them, and not just by writing million-dollar checks.
In a second, but when you have this elite capture, when you have, as you mentioned, businesses, you have universities, and you have think tanks, the elites that are selling Americans out, selling out the average American, so they get rich off of China. It's outrageous. We used to have leaders in this country that wore American lapel pins. They would never sell their country out. They would never allow themselves to be taken for money for a foreign entity. They were too great of Americans, and you see it happening every single day now.
I'm going to let everybody in a little secret. There are a lot of Democrats in this country that see the way that China is run and say, if only we could be in charge that way here. Whether it's the way they handle COVID, the state command and control economy, effectively authoritarian capitalism, which is what China does. Don't Democrats look at this and say to themselves, wow, if we could call all the shots, we could build trains, roadways, railways, everything just as fast. We could do all the sorts of solar energy and Green New Deal projects we want. So there's an innate sympathy,
Get rid of the court, get rid of Republicans. Yeah, it's aspirational.
It
the
is
Communist
indeed.
Party. Buck Sexton, thanks for joining me.
Thanks.